after the aircraft loads, it takes about 15 to 20 seconds to initialize all the systems. Let it do that. And at this point, we are ready to configure the aircraft for takeoff. After the systems initialize, we will configure the aircraft. It is already running. We could start this up from a cold and dark environment, but PMDG made it so that if you are like me that normally don't fly these complex aircraft and you just want to get in it and take off, you can pretty much at this point just add flaps and advance the throttle and off you go. I'm just going to do a basic quick and dirty configuration to get us going here. So the first thing that I'll do is select 5 degrees of flaps. To do that, press the F7 key 3 times, and we'll see that the flaps were going down here. But we can also see that the flap indicators is moving. It will stop at 5. The next thing we need to do is select RTO, or auto brakes for rejected takeoff, and it is the other way, right there. So we have rejected takeoff armed, flaps at 5. Next we'll move to the FS and select both VOR indicators here. That's VOR 1 and VOR 2. Also want to change the range to 40. Next we move to the overhead, and here everything is pretty much already configured for us. It's nothing to really do except that we can verify that everything is what it should be, and if you haven't changed anything, it is. So the only other thing I'm going to do here is turn on the lights. Here's a gang bar that you can turn all the lights at once, or you can do so individually if you so desire. And the only other light that I want on is the anti-collision. We're already on the runway, so I'm going to flick that on. Next we'll move down to the FMC. Now this aircraft, you can do everything pretty much from the FMC. Of course, if even you can set up FS actions and PMDG setup. If I click on that, as you can see, there's a panel state that you can save. So you can save it. If you configure your panel, you can save it. Or you can load panel state, one that you previously saved. Or let me click on that to show you if you want to load a cold and dark environment and do everything from scratch, you can do so. Going to FS actions and change the fuel. You can change the fuel on payload, and as you can see, manage ground connections as well as doors and pushback and cabin lights. So for fuel, you can configure, as you can see, the tanks are almost full. I got 98.9%. I'm going to do a short flight, so 2/3 is probably going to work for me. So I'm going to select that. And now I have 66% of fuel, or about 2/3. So I will return to the main menu, and now we're ready to go into the FMC. Okay, we've set up the fuel. Now we're going to go into the FMC by clicking in this button, left 1. And here we can see that it displays some information in the identification page. Basically, it's telling us that we have right now as I'm making the video, we're in September. So this IRAC, it's from July of this year, so it's the nav data is out of date, but we can still use that. So next we gonna go to position init, plus init, and here we need to enter the reference airport, and we are at KLAX, so we'll type KLAX, and it goes into the scratch pad, and whatever we type here, where you see the dashes, you can input information. So by clicking that button, then the KLAX I had typed in the scratch pad goes in there. Next, we'll go and enter a route. So we'll click next, and here it wants an origin and a destination. So we're taking off from KLAX, and normally you're not on the runway, but we already are, so I'm going to enter it. We're on runway 07 left, and enter that information there. And the destination, let's go for a short trip. Let's go to San Diego. That's KSAN for San Diego. So we have an origin and a destination, and to have a complete route we need one other fix. So I'm going to go to the next page where I can enter another fix. What to enter? One quick way of doing so is going to the world menu and then choosing map. From here we could let me zoom in a little bit, and as you can see, that's the airport. Let me go back up. That's LAX, that's where we're at. And these lines here are what is known as jet airways, and these triangles are intersections. So we know we're going to be going down south towards San Diego, so we can choose any fix along the way here. Okay, normally if you hover over them, the information pops up, but it doesn't. The other way you can do it is zoom in, and then you'll see the names. You may have to zoom in a couple times. So there it goes. There you can see the names of the intersections. So right here, NUPO, it stands for, it's that intersection right there, that little triangle, and this is Newport Beach. So, but that's the name you would type into the FMC. Of course, you can use any other one. You can use airports. This one is KSNA, John Wayne Airport. But let's use this one. So it's an intersection right off the coast in front of Newport Beach, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to click cancel out of here and then back into my FMC, and I'll enter that information into my FMC. New PO for Newport Beach. I'm going to type it in there, and actually, let me go here. As you can see, this is runway 7 at LAX, and you can see the route. It's in light blue, and as soon as I hit activate and execute, it'll become, let me show you. It'll change to a solid magenta line and execute, and there it is. That's my, that's where the aircraft is at, and that's my first leg. Now this dotted magenta line, it's the heading, so I'm going to change that. Typically you want the heading to be, when you're departing, either the runway heading, or in this case you could also make it the heading that you're going to go to your first fix. But we can fix that later. Let me get back into the FMC. So now we have origin and destination and one additional fix in our route. Let's move on to performance in it. So here we need to enter information such as zero fuel weight and reserves and all of these. PMDG makes it easy enough to where if you click, for instance, the zero fuel weight button, it'll put the information for you. You don't have to calculate it, that is, down in the scratch pad. By clicking on it a second time, it puts the information in it. Some of the other gross weight gets calculated and whatnot. Now for reserves, I'm going to use 20. And actually I entered that as cost index. I'll fix that. I'm going to put 20 again and enter it into reserves, and then cost index, I'm going to make it 100. And then for cruising altitude, we're going on a short flying. 10,000 feet should be enough. So I'm going to do 10,000 feet and enter that. At this point, the exit light illuminates, and we can press that. Next, we're going to go to the N1 limit page, and we're gonna derate. We could derate, but we're not gonna do any of that. We're gonna take the defaults at this page. Later, there's a manual with over 3,000 pages that you can read and figure out what all this means, if you are so inclined. So at this point, I'm going to move to takeoff, and here we're going to enter flaps. If you remember, we have selected already 5 degrees of flaps. I'm going to enter 5, and then here we need the center of gravity, and PMDG calculates that for you. All you have to do is press on that button, and you'll have it down here. And then you press it again, and center of gravity is 21.7, and that calculates the trim for you, and the trim is 5.35, and it is already set for you. The next thing we need to do is the V speeds, and they're calculated for you here. As you can see, 140 for B1, 142 it's rotation speed, and 151 is V2. Now the speeds need to be here, so to do that you click on the corresponding button next to the speed. So B1 is 140, rotation speed is 142, and B2 is 151. So at this point we have configured the FMC. Now that the FMC is configured, let's move on to we need to set TCAS, and that's it's this knob right here, and where's this? It's kind of hard to see, but we want to set it right there, and that will let me show you. We had a warning for TCAS, and now it's gone because we took care of it. So next, what we need to do is change the heading. So see how it's, we want to make it runway heading, and to do that we'll go to the autopilot, and let me see, it's right here. As you can see, the heading, it's 000, and it is pointing that way. To change that, we will click here and make it runway heading, which should be 67 or 70. The altitude is set at 10,000. That was the default. That's how high we're going to be flying, so I'll leave it at 10,000. I just changed the heading to where I wanted it, which is 070. That's runway heading. Speed. Remember the V speeds. We want to set the auto throttle to a speed that's 15 knots more than V2, or 200 knots. So I'm gonna set it to 200 knots. So there it is, 200 knots. Then I'm gonna arm the auto throttle, and as you can see, it's armed, shows it right there. And then I'm gonna turn on the flight director. Now, in order to use the toggle switch for this aircraft, is Control Shift and the letter G, as in golf. You need to have both flight directors on, otherwise you cannot engage the toggle button. So here's the other flight director. I'm going to turn it on. At this point, my quick and dirty, or really basic configuration, it's complete. I'm going to cycle through the views here and check as I go. Auto throttle arm, flight director on. Actually, both of them were on. We checked. We just checked that. Overhead panel, we have our lights on. FMC set up, and our radios, throttle, MCP. We have V speeds. RTO is configured, 5 degrees of flaps. We look to the left, we look to the right. We're ready to take off.